Have you ever heard of a civilization that just now vanished? I am not talking about a lost city swallowed by the jungle or a society that declined over centuries. I mean a civilization that disappeared so completely it left behind no ruins, no pottery, no tools, and most mysteriously, no graves. It sounds like science fiction, but this is the story of the Yamnaya people, a culture that dominated the vast Eurasian steppes over 5,000 years ago. The Yamnaya were not a small, isolated tribe. They were a powerful, influential group of people, often considered the first true pastoral nomads. Picture this: vast, open grassland stretching from modern-day Ukraine to Kazakhstan. Instead of cities and farms, the Yamnaya lived a life on the move, following their massive herds of cattle, sheep, and goats. Their homes were likely mobile tents, similar to yurts, placed on top of large, ox-drawn wagons. They were essentially the world's first people to live in mobile homes, constantly seeking fresh pastures for their animals. This lifestyle was a revolutionary adaptation to the challenging environment of the steppe, allowing them to thrive where settled agriculture was impossible. Their society was built around the herd, wealth was measured in livestock, and their entire existence revolved around the seasonal migrations necessary to keep their animals fed. This constant movement is the first clue to our mystery. Civilizations that build cities from stone and mud leave behind obvious ruins, but a people who live in temporary, mobile structures. Their footprint on the landscape would be incredibly light. A campsite used for a few weeks or months would leave little more than flattened grass and the remains of a few campfires, which would be quickly reclaimed by nature. After a few years, let alone a few thousand, it would be as if they were never there. But what about their tools, their clothes, their everyday objects? Surely, something must have survived. Well, the Yamnaya lived in a pre-metal heavy era. While they had some copper objects, most of their essential tools were likely made from organic materials, wood, bone, leather, and plant fibers. Think about it: wooden bows, leather bags, bone needles, woven baskets. These materials are biodegradable. Over the span of 5,000 years, exposed to the elements, they would simply rot away and return to the earth, leaving no trace for archaeologists to find. Unlike the stone tools of earlier peoples or the pottery of their settled neighbors, the Yamnaya toolkit was almost entirely ephemeral. This brings us to the biggest puzzle of all: the missing graves. Nearly every human culture in history has some form of burial ritual. We build tombs, we erect monuments, we bury our dead with goods for the afterlife. The Egyptians had their pyramids, the Vikings their ship burials. The Yamnaya, however, are an anomaly. For a civilization so widespread and successful, the almost complete absence of traditional graves is baffling. Archaeologists have searched for decades and found next to nothing. So, what happened to their dead? This is where the theories get fascinating. One leading hypothesis is a practice known as sky burial or excarnation. This is a funerary practice where a human corpse is placed on a mountaintop or a specially built platform to be exposed to the elements and eaten by scavenging animals, particularly birds. In many cultures that practice this, such as in parts of Tibet, this is seen as a way of returning the body to the earth and releasing the soul. The bones might then be collected and disposed of in a way that leaves little archaeological trace. For a nomadic people like the Yamnaya, this makes a lot of sense. Digging graves in the hard, often frozen ground of the steppe would have been incredibly difficult. A sky burial, on the other hand, is practical. It has a clean and efficient way to handle the deceased, without having to carry them or spend days on a difficult burial. It also fits their worldview of living in harmony with nature. Just as they lived lightly on the land, perhaps they believed in returning their bodies to the natural cycle just as lightly. The result: no skeletons, no coffins, no graveyards, nothing. So, how do we know the Yamnaya even existed if they left nothing behind? The answer is incredible, and it comes from a place they couldn't erase: their genes. The real breakthrough in understanding the Yamnaya came not from archaeologists with shovels, but from geneticists in a lab. In the 2010s, advances in ancient DNA analysis allowed scientists to extract and sequence DNA from human remains thousands of years old. And when they started analyzing skeletons from across Europe and Asia, they found a startling pattern. Around 5,000 years ago, a massive wave of new DNA suddenly appeared in the genetic record of Europe. This DNA signature, traced back to the Pontic-Caspian steppe, belonged to the Yamnaya. It wasn't a small trickle, it was a flood. Studies have shown that this migration was so significant that the Yamnaya and their descendants replaced a huge portion of the existing European population's genetic ancestry. In some areas, like modern-day Britain, the genetic turnover was over 90%. This means that within a few generations, the genetic makeup of the entire continent was fundamentally and permanently altered. This genetic evidence paints a picture of a massive, rapid expansion. But it wasn't just a movement of people, it was a movement of culture. Along with their genes, the Yamnaya brought two other transformative innovations. The first was their mastery of the horse and the wheel. Combining these two technologies, they created the chariot's ancestor, the wheeled wagon. This gave them unprecedented mobility, allowing them to cross vast distances faster than any people before them. They could outmaneuver rivals, manage larger herds, and expand into new territories with incredible speed. They were the original pioneers of the open road. The second, and perhaps most impactful, innovation they brought was language. The Yamnaya are now widely believed to be the speakers of Proto-Indo-European, the ancestral tongue from which almost all modern European languages English, Spanish, German, Russian, Hindi, and many others are descended. As they spread across Europe and into Asia, their language spread with them, evolving over millennia into the diverse family of languages spoken by billions of people today. So, every time you speak English, you are using a language whose roots can be traced back to these ghost-like nomads of the steppe. So, what happened to the Yamnaya themselves? They didn't just vanish in the sense of dying out, instead, they assimilated. As they migrated into Europe and Asia, they mixed with the local populations they encountered. Their unique culture, adapted for the open steppe, gradually blended with the settled farming cultures of their new homes. Their nomadic lifestyle gave way to a more settled existence, their ephemeral traditions replaced by the more permanent practices of the people they joined. In a way, the Yamnaya became victims of their own success. Their expansion was so vast, and their genetic and linguistic impact so profound that they effectively dissolved into the new cultures they helped create. They are the invisible ancestors of a huge portion of the world's population. They left no cities for us to explore, no tombs for us to marvel at, and no artifacts for our museums. Their legacy isn't written in stone or buried in the ground. It's written in our DNA and spoken in our languages. The story of the Yamnaya is a powerful reminder that a civilization's greatness isn't always measured by the monuments it leaves behind. Sometimes, the most powerful legacy is the one you can't see. They are the ghost civilization that's all around us, a silent, invisible thread woven into the very fabric of who we are. It makes you wonder, what other profound stories are hidden in our past, waiting not for an archaeologist's trowel, but for the next scientific breakthrough to bring them to light? Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into our hidden history. See you next time.